Alright, a war movie. Haven't seen those in a long time.
Nakajimaさんは今何をおっしゃいと言いますか。あなた遅いです。
So there's a World War II war movie called Fury. You take a bunch of guys, you put them in a tank, they all go crazy, and that's because it's wartime, right? That's what this movie's about. Fury examines the fact that the war is not a black and white issue. You can have yeah, the German army was vicious in what they were doing. The SS were the cruelest pricks in the world. But what Fury tries to show is that cruelty isn't a one-way street. Because these guys had been through battle, been through war, they became cruel themselves. Because of what they had seen in the war, it had turned them around and made them psychologically vicious. To the point where the tank commander, played by Brad Pitt, has no hesitation at all to teach his gunner how to kill a German SS man by shooting him in the back. Any SS that this man, the Brad Pitt character, the tank commander, encountered, he just shot them outright. Back, front, any way possible, white flag, whatever, he just killed them. He didn't want anything to do with them. His back's heavily scarred, as it shows in one scene. He was on fire at one time and survived it. His back was just scar tissue. One big, long plane of scar tissue. Although the mistake they made in filming that part was the fact that this character still had hair in the back of his head. There shouldn't have been any. That would have got burned off too, by the looks of that. Unless he was set on fire while he was laying on his back. But anyway, beyond that, Fury is about a tank commander crew that just survived one encounter after the other, from the beginnings in Africa and the United States landing in Morocco, up through Sicily to Italy, all the way up to D-Day invasion, France, and now they were in Germany. The war was coming to an end in a few weeks. I think it was maybe 2 weeks. And they were just fighting this relentless onslaught of Hitler's total war program, where he was sending invalids. All they were encountering at this time was women, children, old men, and soldier combatants who were wounded but had to leave their hospital beds to pick up guns to go fight again. And that's what type of war crews they were meeting. And it was just, I guess they were tired of the war as well. And you know, when you see somebody die in front of you all the time and be killed. I mean, at one point, if you watch carefully, you'll see the tank commander, he puts up a big tough front, but he has to get away from everybody and get away from his men and go between tanks or behind tanks. And then the whole fear that he feels, and the fear of death, and his dislike of what he's become, and you just see it pour through his entire being. And I think everybody misses that character. It's his humanity coming out, which he suppressed and buried to a point. But when it comes out, he's just completely destroyed by the whole event and the situation that he's going through in this movie. I mean, one of my grandfathers was in the Italian campaign against the German army, and he got to the point where when he came home, he was just mentally wrecked. Every time he heard a prop plane coming by, he had to hide. He had to dive for cover under benches or rocks or trees or anywhere, and then scream out loud, telling his family and anybody around him to hide that they were about to get bombarded. And this is what was after he got back to Canada. And my another grandfather that I had, he was he was too old to be in the regular army, so they put him in the anti-aircraft squad. And he illuminated an airplane called the Pencil. It was a German bomber, because it was nicknamed the Pencil because it was so long. And he was illuminating this aircraft with his, they were in the sandbagged area, ARP, aircraft, air raid personnel. And he had to shine the spotlight on these bombers that were coming in on the Battle of Britain. And so he just kept shining this light on this bomber that was coming towards them, and it dropped the bombs right in front of them and blew off part of his face and damaged, I mean, the concussion from the blast just wrecked his parts of his brain. He shook for the rest of his life, and he had these horrific scars on his face. But when he came back to Canada, but if I only had an ounce of the strength of this man, or these men, and just I know they don't call themselves heroes or anything, they just did what they had to do, but when you think about it, wow. Anyway, Fury shows what happens when you don't get any respite from this. You're just constantly in battles all the time, and it's in the back of their minds, and it becomes their dreams and everything, and it just shows you how the character of these guys become destroyed. And there's one guy in there, he's the mechanic, he has this really large nose. I think he's supposed to be from Detroit. And oh God, I worked with guys like that before for maybe up to 2 years at a stretch, and they are the worst friggin' pricks you could ever meet. One of these guys is in this movie, and he's one of the tank people. You just can't stand them, but you understand them, but you can't stand being with them. But you have to work with them anyway, so you make do. It's not like a black and white issue in this film. It does, in fact, show the horrors of war when you see this tank top being blown off and the tank commander going with the tank top and it just rolling on top of him. Oh my God. You just picture that. Like my next door neighbor, he was in World War II. He's long since deceased, but he was walking towards, he was a scout in the Canadian Army, and in France he was walking across the field with one of his buddies who was just a little ways over, and they're walking towards this what looked to be a burnt out building, but there was an anti-aircraft gun inside. The Germans had turned the anti-aircraft gun on them, and his buddy took the complete hit from an anti-aircraft shell right to the chest. It blew off the top part of his body and just left the legs there. And he said he watched his friend take 2 steps forward, and just the legs and the hips, and then fall over. That's all that was left of him. And you imagine the horrors of that type of thing. And in this Brad Pitt movie, Brad Pitt's trying to show that horror and what it does to your mind. And the tank commander tries to have a civilized part when he can have it. And in the end, the tank breaks down on a mission. They're supposed to stop on this road and just hold it for a while to prevent 300 German troops who consist of old men, children, and SS that were probably hospitalized from their wounds and were now back on the road and carrying guns again. But the tank breaks down, hits a mine, and I guess he decided, at that point you can tell, he decided, I can't go back to the United States like this, I'm too messed up. And he knew he wasn't going to make it and leave, so the entire team ends up committing suicide in the end, because they wanted to run in the other direction, but they couldn't leave their tank commander behind, who was determined to die in battle. He just couldn't go back. And so they just stood there and stood their ground, and one guy survived, the newbie, who had trouble adjusting to murder. or war murder, I should say. But in the end, it was just like they all committed suicide. Then the newbie survived, but that's how the movie ended. I recommend this to anybody if you're studying. If you're studying what happens to a person in war and the psychological torture of the combatants. This greatly shows what they got to go through and why they become what they become. This is a great war film. The action sequences are just freaking incredible. I mean, the tank battles here and the tank against anti-tank weapons. Very much recommend this movie. So well done.
I'm not ever gonna give